So you've heard of a victory garden and you want to build one fast, but you don't know where to start. Well, today on Wild Florida, we're going to talk about how to build a victory garden fast. Hi, I'm Jacqueline, the Wild Floridian, and welcome to episode 3 of the 9-part series where we go from lawn to a victory garden in a snap. A victory garden where we increase food security, decrease costs in a time of crisis. If this is your first time joining us and you want to start from the beginning, go ahead and click on this card right here, or you can wait till the end of the episode and a card will appear in one of these 4 corners. Okay, let's get started. Let's build a victory garden in less than 1 hour. Whoa, wait! Before you start tearing up your lawn, there's a few questions we need to answer first. Actually, 4 questions. The first one's gonna be, where are you putting your victory garden? And the second one is should it be a raised bed victory garden? The third thing is do you wanna have a nice little border on it? Because you know you're in a time of crisis, so having it be really pretty is very important right now. And the fourth thing you need to think about is how big is your victory garden gonna be? So let's get into those questions before we go and build it, because if we set it up right, then we're gonna have more success in the long run. All right, let's talk about where are you gonna go put your victory garden. So there's a couple different things we need to think about when figuring out where to put our victory garden. It comes down to sunlight, it comes to water, and obstacles. And I don't mean like an obstacle course. So the first thing is you wanna think about the sun. How much sun does that area that you're thinking about get? If you're getting full sun all day, generally that's gonna be great for most of the country. But if you live in a place like Central, South Florida, or some of the other very subtropical arid desert areas, you may not want full sun all day, and you need to consider about how you get dappled shade or some shade, especially at the hottest points of the day. So do you have a structure that maybe block them? Or if even in the northern areas, even if you get a little bit of dappled shade, so think like it coming through little leaves on a tree, that may be okay. But generally, you're gonna wanna get full sun for our fruits and vegetables. The second thing you wanna think about, is gonna be water. The first part has to do with, do you have access to water? So are you using things like sprinklers, or even if you're gonna use something like a hose, if the hose is on the far side of your yard and you have no way of getting it to your victory garden, that's gonna be problematic or very annoying. And so you generally wanna make it easy for you to get water to the location. The next thing you want to think about is that how is the ground, like do you have flood areas in your yard? I do, so I tend to want to stay away from flood areas in my yard. So you need to make sure you have lots of sunshine and you want to have access to water so that you can give your plants a nice little drink, but not too much. And then last you want to think about is obstacles. So I don't really have this problem, but you might, which is things like rocks or giant root systems of big oak trees. All of these things could become obstacles to you actually building a garden bed. So if you have the option of staying away from those areas, you should do that. So what you want to look for is open, clear space in a grassy lawn. You're going to want to look for a place that has easy access to water or already gets water through sprinkler systems. And last but not least, lots of sunshine. So the second question we got to ask is, should you build a raised bed garden? I know everyone thinks it's the coolest craze, and usually when you see a lot of gardening videos, you see these perfect raised beds all around. Well, not all raised beds are created equal, nor should all people build raised victory garden beds. And here's the reason why. So in my location, because I live in a flood zone, a raised bed is generally speaking a pretty good idea, because when it's the rainy season from June 1st to October 1st, well, I get so much rain that when you step on it every day, it goes squish, squish, squish. So I want to make sure that, my plants aren't drowned. For you, you may not live in a squishy area throughout the summer. Maybe you live in a very dry location, maybe almost desert-like Southern California or maybe Arizona. Well, you should consider not doing a raised garden bed. And here's the reason why. It's because in my area, is that the water level in the ground is up. So by raising up my vegetables and fruit, it allows for the roots to be able to drive out. It's just like you and me. We like a drink of water, but nobody wants to be dumped into the ocean and drink it, right? Well, on the flip side, if there's not a lot of water, like in a more arid location, is you want to go down into the ground so that they have more access to the water table, is one way. But you can also build a raised bed in dry areas and you create a whole system, which I'm not gonna do in this video, but I'll just kind of explain to you very briefly, which is if you've ever seen things like self-watering pots, what basically you're doing is you're creating what's called a water table at the bottom of the raised garden bed through creating rock systems and creating a barrier between the ground and it so that water can go in and the roots can reach down, and that's just the general basics of it. There's other people who can do this and describe it much better than I, so go check them out. But I did want to make you aware that that would be a reason why you want to do a raised bed. Now, if you don't have a water issue, you get nice even water or you get sprinkler systems and you don't see flooding in your yard, then you can go straight with the ground. But there's a second reason why, because just like you and me like to have a nice drink of water, we also like to eat, and the same goes for your plants. And remember, because you're eating them, you want to make sure your plants have optimal nutrition. So another reason why you may want to go do a raised bed is because you've got poor soil, and guess who does? Yep. I live in Central Florida, and Central Florida has what's called Mayaca soil. Mayaca soil is a very sandy soil. It's a lot of sand with very little what we call organic components. And the way you can tell, if you weren't sure, is that when you're digging your soil, look at the color of it. If, like ours, it looks like a very light gray, almost whitish because of all the sand in it, that's telling you it's too sandy and doesn't have enough organic material for my fruits and vegetables to eat. On the other side, a lot of people have like clay soil, well, and you'll probably get like a reddish color. If it's too reddish, then guess what? You need to probably build up so that you can get away from some of that clay. But regardless of what type, you need to have what's called black gold. That is the ideal type for growing most vegetables and fruit. Unless you're growing something like a citrus, they don't like that. They like to actually have what I have, which is Mayaca soil, which is why oranges are grown in Florida. So what you'll want to do is if you think you have poor soil based on looking at it, then what you're going to want to do is build up your soil to have a raised garden bed. So it's water or food should be the reasons why you should consider having a raised garden bed. But if you don't have that issue, you've got black gold, you don't have drowning of your plants, then hey, keep it flat to the ground. Wait, no, there's one more reason why you might want to do a raised garden bed, and that might be because of pests. If you feel that the access to pests may be an issue, then you may want to come up off the ground. But you won't know, you're not going to keep away bunnies by having a raised garden bed that's this high. So you may have to put other structures in place as you learn and see kind of what's going on in your area. And the very last reason why you might have a raised garden bed is because of you. You may need a raised garden bed because you have back or joint issues that cause it to be really hard for you to work lower on the ground and need a raised one. And these tend to be very raised. I'm talking about like 3.5 to 4 feet. So that would be something to consider, but I'm not gonna go and build one of those today. I just wanted you guys to think about that before you get building. So the third thing we wanna figure out is border or no border. Well, if you're gonna do a raised garden bed, well, you need a border, otherwise your bed's gonna collapse. I mean, you could do it. I mean, think back when you were a kid and you were building like one of those sand mountains, and like at a certain point you kept putting it up, but then it kept getting wider and wider so you could go up. So at a certain point you kind of need something on the edges to hold everything together. If you don't need to go up, then you don't need a border. You may want a border because you like to have nice square lines and make things look pretty, but remember, butterfly, we're in a time of crisis, so pretty is not as important right now. So something to consider is if you don't need a border, then don't, because done is better than perfect. But if you're thinking you want a border and you've got some materials, what you're gonna see in this video is me building a border out of found materials in my yard. Actually, this right behind me, which is called an areca palm. You don't have to have areca palms. We'll get more into that in a little bit when we're actually building. And now let's answer the last question before we get started in building is how big of a victory garden? Now, if you just physically don't have space, well, then just build with what you got. But there's some general things I want you to think about, and that is how long your arms are, right? So if you, from one side of access, you only want it to be 2 feet from that side of access because you can't reach it. You get what I'm saying? You can't reach it. So if you can access a victory garden from either side, then you can make it 4 feet wide, is as wide as you want to go. If you can only access it from one side, you want to go only 2 feet. Make sense? Okay, now how long? As long as you want to make it. Typically, a lot of people will do a 4 by 4, so 4 feet by 4 feet, little square, or 4 feet by 8 feet. Why? I don't know. But you don't have to. It could be 4 by 6. It could be 3 by 10. Those are all options. As long as you can reach your plants and you don't run into another structure, why not? Okay, you ready? Let's get into actually building the Victory Garden bed. Okay, let's get started. So for me, let me answer my question. So where am I gonna go put my Victory Garden? Well, I'm doing it in my front yard. I'm gonna put 2 beds in, 2 approximately 3 by 8 foot-ish beds. Doesn't need to be perfect. Done's better than perfect because we're in a time of crisis, right? So let me see. It's got generally full sun, but it does get shade from my neighbor's oaks throughout the day because I live in Florida, and full sun in this kind of heat and this kind of subtropic sunlight is a bit much for my plants. So it's a good location because about I don't remember what time of day, it starts getting shade from pines on one side. So it's gonna get a good enough amount of shade where plants will thrive, but not too much where they're gonna wilt and die. The second thing is that I need to consider the water in the area. I've got sprinklers that hit it, so when it's not the rainy season, they will already get water at least twice a week. And let me think, oh, and it rains a lot, and I'm coming up on rainy season, so I'm definitely gonna need to do a raised bed because that yard gets squishy. Yeah, definitely squishy during the rainy season. So we're gonna need to go up just a little bit, but it's got a downward slope, so I don't need to go up too high, but just enough so that they don't drown. And obstacles, no, I don't have any obstacles, but because I'm doing a raised bed, because I have to go up a little bit, I'm gonna need some border material. So that's what we're gonna start first is I'm gonna go harvest a border material. Now, because I'm trying to reduce costs, I don't wanna go and buy anything. Now you can use lots of different materials from concrete cinder blocks, you know, you can go buy some wood, but because we always wanna do it cheap, think about what's readily available. Think about what exists in your yard already. Think about what people have been throwing away in your neighborhood. This Victory Garden over here, well, it's not technically a Victory Garden because I didn't build it in a time of crisis, but we had an area where an old pine tree had been cut down and the termites had broken it down really nicely. And then a neighbor, they were taking out the tiles of their pool deck and they're like, hey, you like to do stuff with stuff. Do you want these? I was like, yeah, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with them. But eventually my son and I kind of made a little circular sun border out of it and we made a garden in between. So how much did it cost me? Well, the time to move the materials is what it cost me. So, and like we say, the cheaper the thing is, the more the time it costs, but who cares, right? I got a nice little border. It looks kind of cool. Got some pumpkins and some corn and lettuce growing in there, hidden in there. So think about what you can find. So what I'm gonna be doing in this video is I'm using areca palms. It's actually what's right behind me here. It's a plant that already grows in my yard. It kind of looks like bamboo-ish. And they spread a lot, and I had some of that palm that was kind of encroaching on my calamondin. I know you've heard of a calamondin, right? No, you haven't? Okay, it's a citrus plant, and that little plant does not like being crowded by the areca palm, so we cut it back and got some nice palms that would make a nice little border. It just took the time of cutting it down. So we used a handsaw to cut it down, and then used things like the machete to cut off the palms, and then I used the hedge trimmers to then take the palms and cut them into stakes. The next step is that we're gonna mattock up the grass. Is really what I'm just trying to do is kill the grass quickly. I'm not trying to remove all of it from the area. Actually, you notice I'm not removing any of it from the area because what I'm gonna end up doing is basically sheet mulching it down so that it dies. And it becomes compost for the plants that are gonna come in later. So I've mattocked up the ground. Then I put the base of the border in on 3 of the sides. Now the next thing to do is add soil. We're gonna use that garden soil and go ahead and put about 2 to 3 inches. So because I'm doing about a 3 by 8-ish bed, I'm using 3 bags of garden soil for it. The next thing I'm gonna do after I put my soil in place is now I'm gonna use some of those palm stakes that I built, and I'm gonna put those up against my areca palms so that I can layer in palms on 3 of the sides to start building up my garden bed. So the next step after we've built up the 3 sides of the wall is then I filled up my yard cart with mulch and I started dumping it on. It took me, I think, about 4 to 5 dumps. That sounds bad. It took me about 4 or 5 loads of mulch to fill up the garden bed because I was really going for about 3 to 4 inches. I wanted to go deep on the mulch. This would ensure that I prevent weeds from getting in there. It would retain water on the upper levels so that they didn't lose too much from the high heat. And it would also be able to absorb more water during that rainy season. And now that I filled it up mostly with mulch, now I need to put in that 4th wall. So put the bottom piece in, add the stakes, and layer up some palms to fill it in. So after completing the 4th wall border, I then just put some mulch around the beds just because I knew we were gonna be walking there a lot, and basically because of the high traffic of us moving around those garden beds a lot, it would eventually kill the grass pretty quickly. So I just figured I'd layer it out with some mulch right from the get-go so that I wouldn't have to worry about weeds popping up between the grass. Okay, so we built a border, we mattocked our grass, then we filled in the dirt, we built up the walls, then I went and put in my mulch, closed up my borders, put some mulch around it so I don't kill my grass, and one bed took me 52 minutes. And for the whole process, it took about 2.5 hours from cutting down my border to cutting down my border. Well, you know what I meant, like cutting down my areca palms and going and building both garden beds. Also started to slow down as I went along, right? Because it's tiring. Who said it was a light activity? So you may be saying, well, that's not the prettiest bed. Yeah, I know, because it's meant to be efficient. I'm in a time of crisis. And you can look up a lot of different types of border designs and different patterns. And yes, that's very cool to do. And if you've got a lot of time and resources to go do that, go for it. There's cool spiral patterns and all sorts of neat things. You're more than welcome to go and find them. But remember, we're focusing on this because we want to increase food security, decrease costs in a time of crisis. And we're done with our victory garden. Yay! Way to go! You did awesome. But wait, we didn't plan anything yet. And that's gonna be next episode. We're gonna talk about the 3 types of plants that you need in your victory garden. And to make sure you don't miss it, go ahead and like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notification. New videos each week, but we're gonna be doing 5 videos a week while we're getting through the Victory Garden series because you're in a time of crisis. And while you wait for the next video to come out, you can go ahead and watch the Growing Food is Easy Challenge series where we dig deeper in how to grow food, or you can watch one of my other videos until the next video comes out for the Victory Garden series. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.